John sat on the edge of the bed, gently pulling the blanket over his little boy. It had been another long day, 2 part-time jobs, aching feet, and barely enough to put food on the table. In the dim glow of the flickering lamp, he opened his worn wallet. A few crumpled dollars stared back at him, a painful reminder that rent was due in 2 days and groceries were running low. He sighed, whispering a silent prayer for strength. Just as he stood to turn off the light, a sharp knock echoed through the quiet apartment. His heart skipped. Who could it be at this hour? Slowly he opened the door and froze. 2 little girls stood there, identical twins no older than 6. They were shivering, their cheeks pink from the cold, clutching each other as if the world was against them. Their thin jackets did nothing to shield them from the night air. "Mister, can we stay here tonight, please? We're scared," one of them whispered, her voice trembling like a fragile leaf in the wind. John's eyes softened, but doubt gripped his mind. He barely had enough for his son. How could he take in 2 more mouths to feed? Yet, looking into their tear-filled eyes, his heart made the choice his wallet couldn't. "Come in," he said gently, stepping aside. As they walked in, clutching his hand, John felt a strange ache in his chest, not from burden, but from something deeper. A quiet question lingered in his mind. Who were these girls, and why were they alone on a night like this? He didn't know it yet, but this single act of kindness would change his life forever. John hesitated for a moment, the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. He glanced at the 2 little girls standing before him, their tiny bodies trembling, cheeks streaked with dried tears. Their jackets were paper, thin, hardly enough to keep the cold away. He couldn't ignore the fear in their eyes, the kind of fear no child should ever know. "Come in," he said finally, holding the door wider. The girls stepped inside, their shoes damp from the freezing pavement. The apartment was small, barely enough for him and his son, but it was warm. John guided them to the couch and hurried to the kitchen. Opening the fridge, he saw what little he had, half a bowl of soup from yesterday. It wasn't much, but it was all he could offer. He heated the soup carefully, pouring it into 2 chipped bowls, and handed them to the girls. They ate slowly at first, then hungrily, as though they hadn't eaten all day. John's stomach growled, but he ignored it. He'd planned to eat the leftover soup himself tonight, but watching them eat felt better than any meal. His son stood nearby, confusion on his face. "Dad, who are they? Why are they here?" John knelt beside him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. He smiled, tired yet tender, because sometimes kindness is all we have to give. The boy nodded slowly, his innocence absorbing the lesson in silence. John fetched a spare blanket from his son's bed and covered the twins as they curled up on the couch. Their breathing softened as sleep claimed them, and for the first time that night, John felt a quiet sense of peace, though he had no idea how tomorrow would unfold. The apartment grew silent except for the soft hum of the heater and the steady rhythm of little breaths. The twins lay curled together on the couch, their tiny faces finally at peace. John pulled the blanket up to their chins and stood there for a moment, watching them sleep. Something about them didn't add up. Their jackets might have been thin, but the fabric was fine, the stitching neat. Nothing like the worn clothes of children who'd been living on the streets. Their shoes, too, polished leather, barely scuffed. Who are they? John wondered, rubbing the back of his neck. They weren't just lost. They belonged somewhere, somewhere different from his world of peeling wallpaper and overdue bills. He sat in the old armchair, exhaustion pulling at his bones, but his mind wouldn't rest. Questions circled like restless birds. Where were their parents? Why were they alone in the cold? He could call the police, but one look at their innocent faces silenced that thought. He didn't want to scare them. Not tonight. His gaze softened as he studied them, fragile and small under the worn blanket. A pang of sorrow struck his chest. The world was harsh on children. It had been harsh on him too, after his wife left. He clenched his jaw and made a silent vow, they'll be safe here. Just for tonight, nothing will hurt them. As the room settled into darkness, a tiny voice broke the silence. One of the girls stirred in her sleep, her lips parting just enough to whisper, "Daddy will find us." John froze. His heart thudded, and a chill ran through him. Daddy, The word echoed in his mind, raising more questions than answers. He leaned back slowly, staring at the ceiling, unaware that this promise of safety was about to change everything. First rays of dawn crept through the torn curtains as John stirred awake in his armchair. His back ached from sleeping upright, but his eyes darted immediately to the couch. The twins were still there, curled up like tiny kittens, breathing softly. Relief washed over him. For one night at least they were safe. Then came the sound, low at first, then growing louder, engines, several of them. John frowned, pushing himself up. Through the cracked blinds, he saw a line of sleek black SUV pulling up outside his rundown building. Men in suits spilled out, moving with urgency, their eyes scanning everything. John's pulse quickened. What is this? Before he could react, a heavy knock rattled the door. His son peeked from the bedroom. Why? Died with fear. John opened the door slowly and froze. A tall, sharply dressed man stood there, his face etched with worry, surrounded by bodyguards. His eyes swept past John and landed on the twins behind him. In an instant, the girls bolted forward, tears streaming down their cheeks as they cried out, "Daddy!" The man dropped to his knees, pulling them into his arms with a sob that broke the morning stillness. John stood there, stunned, watching the reunion unfold like a scene from a life far removed from his own. The man rose to his feet, holding both daughters close. His eyes, now glistening with gratitude, turned to John. For a long moment he said nothing. Then his voice cracked. You had nothing, and still gave them everything. John swallowed hard, words caught in his throat. He had no idea who this man really was, but the polished cars and the suited men told the story. A story that was about to turn John's world upside down. The apartment felt smaller than ever as the weld. Rest man stepped inside, his daughters still clinging to him. The bodyguards waited outside while he faced John, eyes glistening with a mix of relief and gratitude. I can't thank you enough, the man said, his voice low and steady. Do you know how long I've been searching? They ran off during an event. We were terrified. John shifted uncomfortably, rubbing the back of his neck. I just did what anyone would do. He murmured, they needed help, that's all. But the man shook his head firmly. Not everyone would open their door. Not everyone would give their food, their blankets. His gaze dropped to John's worn furniture, the peeling walls, and the tiny pair of shoes by the door. He understood more than John wished to reveal. I want to repay you, the man said. Money, anything you need. John raised a hand gently, shaking his head. No, I wasn't looking for anything. I only did what was right. The man studied him for a long moment, then smiled, a smile full of respect. Then let me do this, he said softly. Come work for me, a stable job, a home where your boy can grow without worry. John's breath caught. He turned to see his son peeking from the bedroom door, his small eyes filled with wonder. Emotion swelled in his chest, almost too heavy to bear. He knelt and hugged his boy tightly, tears stinging his eyes as the reality sank in. Behind him, the twins waved with bright smiles, their tiny voices calling goodbye, as they held their father's hands. And as the sun broke through the clouds, a quiet voice filled the air. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness opens the biggest doors. John's life began that night as a simple act of compassion, opening his door to two frightened little girls when he barely had enough for his own family. He didn't do it for reward or recognition. He did it because his heart told him to. Yet, that single choice changed everything. What started as an ordinary evening in a rundown apartment became a turning point filled with unexpected grace. From sharing his last bowl of soup to promising silent protection, John showed that true kindness needs no wealth. It only needs a willing heart. When the morning brought a fleet of black SUV and a desperate millionaire, the truth unfolded in a way John could never have imagined. The man's gratitude wasn't just words, it was a lifeline, offering John and his son a new beginning, security, and hope. In a world where so many turn away, John chose to give when he had almost nothing. And in return, he gained more than he ever dreamed possible, not just a better life, but proof that goodness has a way of finding its way back. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness doesn't just open doors, it opens a future.